He may join us later. We'll see.
Okay. Who's the, oh, Preston, hi.
Hello.
I'm recording this, so if anybody doesn't want to record it, let me know now.
Don't say anything bad.
Okay, let's give another minute.
Is Preston my new neighbor?
Yes, and he's right below you.
Hey, Preston.
Hi.
We live next to Karen.
Yep. Moving in Friday.
Oh,
Excited.
wow.
Yeah.
This Friday? Wow.
Yep.
Well, today's Friday.
A week from today.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
That's it.
Wow. That's exciting. Where
Yeah,
are you? Where are you now?
We're in Durham at
Oh, okay.
Brenna's parents' house.
Got it. Okay, so it's not like you're moving across the country.
Nope.
Right.
Yeah. We're excited.
Okay, it looks like we got a. So, any last comments before I mute everybody? Okay, so Don, Nancy, let me make you guys co-host.
Oh, sure.
And we're going to talk about Iceland, and let's get started. Mute all. Okay. Oh, actually, I got to unmute you guys.
That's a good idea.
Okay.
Okay, good.
Okay. So welcome to our talk about our trip to Iceland, which we took in May of 2018. We joined a tour run by Road Scholar, who used to be Elder Hostel. Martha, Don, and I went, and all the pictures are ones that I took or that we took, unless I tell you otherwise. A couple I borrowed. So next.
Oh, this is my part. Just some facts about Iceland. It was settled by Vikings a long time ago, 874 AD, although there were some Irish monks that are reported to have been there before that. Initially, it was called Snowland, interestingly enough. Apparently, Vikings, they named things they discovered by the first thing they see. So this person saw snow. The next person saw ice. The person that saw Greenland saw Greenland, and people who saw Vineland saw vines. So that's what I heard. It has the world's oldest parliament, not the largest, the oldest parliament, dating back to 930. And it was populated by Norwegians and then ruled by Danish kings from 1300 to 1904, where after that they had home rule and eventually it became a republic. And interestingly enough, the only native mammal is the Arctic fox, and it'll become abundantly clear why there's no mammals there, because it's pretty isolated. But I don't know how the Arctic fox got there. Probably on a piece of ice, and it just kind of floated there from Norway. The other thing is the population is only 365,000. And Durham County has 325,000, I think. So not much bigger than Durham County in population. And most of those people live in Reykjavik. Oops, that's us.
No.
Go ahead.
Okay. So we flew from Dulles. We decided to drive up to Dulles because we could get a nonstop flight to Reykjavik via Iceland Air. And we flew over Greenland on the way. That's what we saw of Greenland. And of course, when we got there, it was pretty early in the morning, and we went by bus to a nice little restaurant for breakfast, and then to the Blue Lagoon. And that's about 40 minutes outside of Reykjavik. And it was accidentally formed in 1976 during operation at a nearby geothermal power plant. People began to bathe in the warm waters and rub the silica mud on their skin. Turned out to be a good treatment for psoriasis. And there's still research going on for treatments for other skin ailments. But the whole complex was dug out and developed to be an attraction for tourists. And it's a good one. This is the power plant that accidentally created the Blue Lagoon. And we're going to see some pictures of that in a minute. But first, Don.
Okay, first, a little bit about the geology of Iceland. What you see there is a rift. The Mid-Atlantic Ridge runs from the southwest corner to the northeast corner of Iceland. And Iceland was formed about 60 million years ago when this rift went over a plume. It was called the hot spot, or the Iceland plume. And it became just with a buildup of magma and lava. The island formed in about 25 million years to what it looks like today. It's actually the only place you could walk on the mid-Atlantic ridge. So on the right side there, that would be the mid-Atlantic plate, or the Atlantic plate, and the left side would be the Eurasian plate. You go on. Okay. And as Nancy will go through, there's a lot of geothermal areas, a lot of hot pools and geysers, and you'll see them. And go on. And the other feature is glaciers. Of course, back in the Little Ice Age, Iceland was almost all glaciers. Now it's just about 11%. The largest glacier in Europe is in Iceland. And it makes for some pretty interesting volcanic formations, as you will see. And then the other feature is these volcanic formations. And this is an interesting one. These are tabletop mountains. The flat tops were formed when these volcanoes were spewing out lava into glaciers. And so they would cool and just kind of like lay on the top. So we saw a lot of these flat top mountains. And there's another shot of them. And this other interesting feature, and Nancy will tell about the tour of this place. This was a lava pool that eventually found its way and drained out, and steam vents formed these formations. So these things, actually the steam would actually cool the lava, and you would get these interesting formations, and Nancy will talk about those
later.
Oh, you could talk about them now.
No.
Okay, well, that's what happened. So we had a pool, you're looking at the right, and then these steam vents formed, and these steam vents actually cooled the lava, and you got these structures. And the last one I want to talk about are these look like volcanic craters, but these are actually called pseudo craters. And they were formed when lava was covered a swamp or a lake, and steam burst out, and then they formed these pockets. So we saw a bunch of those. So it's pretty interesting topography in Iceland.
So here we are going into the Blue Lagoon. It's really a pretty touristy thing, but it's like a must-do. It's really pretty incredible. And they gave us all drinks, and we all, that's our tour group there. And it was really nice. We enjoyed it. And they built a complex around it, including a restaurant, the Lava Restaurant, that overlooks the pools. And we had this little lava rock with a little mound of butter on it. The dairy products are really good in Iceland. As we left the Blue Lagoon, we walked between these piles of volcanic rock, and you kind of see this type of terrain over a lot of the countryside. Because it's very rocky like that, it keeps the trees really short. They do have forests in Iceland, but the trees are all very small. And they have a joke in Iceland that if you've been out partying and you fall asleep in the forest and you wake up and you're lost, don't worry, all you have to do is stand up. So this is, the first thing we did with our tour group was the Golden Circle. And the Golden Circle, if you look at the map in the lower right, that's all of Iceland, and right down here is Reykjavik. So from Reykjavik, you drive in this big loop, and there's three really terrific things to see there. It starts from Reykjavik. You can do it in a day, or you can take longer. And as we're driving through the countryside, we saw a lot of small churches just kind of plopped in the middle of what seemed to be nowhere. This is a really modern one, but we saw little churches all over the place. And we stopped at a visitor center, and when you walk out of your bathroom stall, this is what you see. It's such an incredible view. They put these giant windows in the bathrooms. And the first place we went is called Thingvellir. And in Icelandic, this is what it looks like a P, but it's a TH, pronounced as a TH. So it's one of Iceland's most significant historic and geological sites. Their first parliament, called the Althing, was founded here in the year 930, and it's the oldest still operating parliament in the world, although it no longer meets here. You can see this rift here, where the Eurasian and North American tectonic plates meet, and they've been drifting apart. We're walking down into the rift, and then this is a wider area of the rift. So you've got two different tectonic plates there. They're moving apart at about 2 centimeters a year, and they still are. Part of Thingvellir, not this area, but there's a place called the Law Rock, and that's where Parliament met. And they had one person who was called the law speaker, and he had to recite. He had to memorize all of the laws and then recite them every year at the Law Rock. And when they had a parliament, people could bring their grievances to the parliament, and it would get voted on how to resolve those grievances. So they met once a year, and of course, it was a real social time too. This is a picture of the Vikings at the law area. Across the bottom is the names of all the law speakers. This is showing the era from like 1084 to 1184. So,
Nancy, can I snap you for a second?
yes.
Do you have the chat window up?
No.
Okay, so on the lower, there's a little icon that says chat. You see it?
No. When I have this big view, I don't. Oh wait a minute. Let me see if I can do this maybe.
You should have two windows, the thing you're showing and then the window with all the pictures of people.
No. Could you maybe?
That bottom.
I'm not. The bottom.
Oh yeah. It's not showing.
It's not showing up. I don't know if that's because of the
Are you on a Mac or Windows?
Windows.
Oh, not a clue.
You want to read something to me?
Okay, I'll just read you what's been on the chat so far. Patricia says, how deep was that rift between the plates?
Good question.
Yeah. Then there's a note from Kathy saying, we almost didn't do the Blue Lagoon because it was billed as touristy, but it was one of my favorite things we did. They sell Slurpees at the lagoon called crap.
Oh, I missed that. Oh no. Now I have to go
Now we
back.
go back.
And then Patricia says, I think we need a law rock in the common house.
All right, let's do it.
So since you can't see the chat, I'll periodically interrupt you with whatever's in the chat window.
Thank you. That'd be great.
Okay.
So after lunch, we went to this place called Friedheimar. It's a year-round farm that grows tomatoes in greenhouses. They use artificial light in the winter, and they use geothermal heat all year round. And they invite visitors to come have a meal of tomato soup and bread and learn about their operation. And they have to buy bees to handle the pollination because there just aren't any naturally there. So the bees arrive in boxes and they never leave, if you know what I mean. So the tomato soup was delicious, and you could snip basil over it, and it was a nice little break in the day. After lunch, we went to Guttlefoss, which means Gold Falls, and it drops down into a deep gorge. Over here on the left, you can see some people. It's really spectacular. There's other people.
No, those are spectacular.
Those are spectacular, yeah. Again, this is the little line of tourists walking up to the edge there. And hang on just a second. This is a video, if you give me a second.
You should just be able to click on the video and it should just play.
Yeah, they're looking for the icon. There it is.
So it's pretty amazing how it just like drops into that gorge there.
I don't see any fences.
I'm sorry?
I don't see any fences. You could fall to your certain death.
You could.
Yes, you could.
You could.
It's not American.
We're not taking a 3-year-old along with us today.
Yeah.
So the next place we went is Geyser, and Geyser is the site of the original geyser. All geysers that are called geyser are named after this one. Um, it comes from the Icelandic verb geysa, meaning to gush, and the geyser used to throw up water to a height of 70 meters in the air, and sometimes even more. It was formed around the 13th century. At the same time, there was an eruption of a large volcano on the island, and over time it has stopped gushing and then gushing again later. This geyser, the original geyser, has actually stopped completely. There were some minor eruptions in 2016, but nothing since then.
It's a geyser.
Yeah, it's a geyser geyser. Yeah. This is what it looks like as you walk around the area.
Here we are in Geyser on a rainy day. Geyser, the original geyser.
As you can see, it was rainy. We had a lot of rainy weather when we were there, which was okay, but this was one of our rainy days. This is still at Geyser, walking around. And then this is one of the geysers that is still going. This goes from 30 to 60 feet in the air. This one's called Churn or Butter Churn. And then it only went off once while we were there, but there's it again. So that evening we had to ourselves, and we walked around the city. We saw a lot of trolls. Real trolls are much bigger than this, but we'll talk about trolls a little bit later. We saw a number of murals. It was, pretty vibrant city. And this is a mailbox to the Yule lads, who are trolls. And I will tell you about Yule lads a little bit later, but it's something Icelanders believe in elves and trolls and the hidden folk. And some say that they don't believe, but they don't not believe. In Iceland, roads have been rerouted around elf areas, and food is left out for the elves. So elves and trolls are pretty important in Iceland. This is their concert hall, which is on a sunny day really spectacular. Even on a rainy day, it was pretty cool. And here's just some scenes we saw as we were walking around Reykjavik. And here's Don with the blockhead friend. And then we went out to a fancy restaurant that night and had this elaborate dinner, and it included minke whale, which we're told is not endangered. So we ate whale meat that night. I hope you don't judge us too badly about that. Then we went to, the next day we went to the National Museum of Iceland, which covers the history from the settlement in 874 till today. The lights on the floor show the size of the Viking ships that they brought their necessary goods over in, including their livestock. So you'd have people crammed in here, and cows and sheep and dogs and all your belongings that you needed. These ships were different. These boats were different from the ones that attacked up and down coastlines. This is a little figure that might be Thor or it might be Christ. It was found in around 1815, and they just don't really know exactly who it is. This is a very modern church that's built there that kind of dominates the skyline of Reykjavik. It's called Hallgrímskirkja, named after a man named Hallgrim. Kirka meaning church. It was built between 1945 and 1986. It's very austere and simple and beautiful. And then we went to the Viking restaurant and we had some good Viking beer. And then the next day, we got onto our ship called the Ocean Diamond. It carries about 200 passengers, and our group, the Rhodes Scholar group, was about 30 people. And we had a porthole cabin, which actually is pretty comfortable. And we took off, and this is what we did. We went from Reykjavik, and we circumnavigated the island. So we went to Stykkishólmur, Ísafjord, Siglafjord. We didn't actually make it to Grimsey Island because of weather. Akureyri, Húsavík, and around all the way down. We actually missed Well, we got to Sept18. We missed, I don't even know how to say it, but we missed the next port because of weather. And then down to Westman, Ijar, and back to Reykjavik. So you're going to see some of these. And right here where Stikkisholmer is on what's called the Snæfellsnes Peninsula. And we ended up here is where the ship docked, and then we traveled to the glacier, which is in the middle here, and down to one of the little towns. This one down here, this is Arnastapi. So we traveled on this peninsula. And this is what Stikkisholmer looks like. In fact, all the towns look pretty much the same, with these beautiful mountains and glaciers behind. And they're right on the edge of the peninsula. And then from there we drove to Arnastapi, which is an even smaller town. And we took a really nice walk along the seaside. And we saw this type of scenery, which was just spectacular, even with the gray skies, or maybe because of the gray skies. It's, very volcanic influenced coastline. This is a typical small harbor that most of the towns along the way have harbors that are like this. This is one at Arnastapi. And these are basaltic columns, which are volcanic origin. And, parts of things have eroded away, but they're in columns. This is a monument to Barter, who was a half man and half troll. And he came to Iceland at the time of the settlement. He was supposed to be a real person. He became a hermit, and he lived in a cave on the glacier there. And he's considered as a guardian spirit of the peninsula of Snæfellsnes. So you can see he's only half troll, so he's not even as big as a troll. And there was a little coffee shop near the monument. And we thought it was kind of funny that there was a Hershey's tin there, probably war era. And also the best cocoa that we've ever had. We went back, one of us went back for seconds. So we did see a lot of different birds. There's, as Don said, there's only one native mammal, although there are horses there and there's other animals there now and things that the Vikings brought, but there's a lot of birds. So these are cormorants. This is an oyster catcher, an eider duck, puffins. We saw some seals and whales.
And people.
And people. And then we drove to the glacier, and we're waiting for the snowcat to go up on the glacier. And this is the snowcat, and you just get on it, and they're just slippery benches. And this thing heads up slopes that are quite steep. So we were all sliding back and forth and up and down and crashing into each other. It was quite exciting. And when we looked back, we could see some blue sky. Sorry, we don't really need to listen to that. But ahead of us was a whiteout. And we just drove into this whiteout conditions. And then the driver stopped and said, "Here we are." And I said to him, "How do you know where we are?" And he says, "I use GPS. And it's a good thing because just up there's a big crevasse." So I'm glad he stopped. And then as we drove back, we stopped and looked back at the glacier. And as you can see, the weather's breaking up. So people behind us had a better tour than us, but it was really, really beautiful. And this is a mount.
Blue sky.
And there was a blue sky. Eventually there was a blue sky. So this is called the Kirkjökull, which is a church mountain, means church mountain. It's one of the most photographed places in Iceland. And you can take a picture from any angle and get like incredible pictures. So when we got back to the little town, I took this for Peter. Peter, they have food trucks in Iceland. Next day we went to a little town. We got back on the ship and we went overnight to the next port. This one was called Ísafjörður. The big industry in Iceland for a long time was fishing, specifically herring. And it was a very successful, and the Norwegians would come fish in their waters, and the Russians would fish in their waters, and the Icelanders fished in their waters. and everybody did well, and it was a big, it was like over 40% of their economy. But in 1967, there weren't any more herring. The herring fisheries collapsed suddenly. In the course of 2 years, they went from, well, I don't have the numbers in front of me anymore, but lots of fish to no fish. And it's partly because of overfishing by everybody, but also partly because the water's cooled and the fish just weren't there anymore. So all these little tiny fishing towns all around the periphery of the island weren't sure what to do, didn't know what to do. So what they tried to do is to attract tourists. So each little town that we stopped at has its own little homegrown tourist attraction to go to. Some of them were quite simple. One of them was a little bit more elaborate. They were all charming in their own way. The first one we went to was in a town called Thingery. And this is this husband and wife created the Viking Museum. Vikings have settled in that area, and they haven't really done much in the way of archaeological digs, but there's little hillocks and areas all around this town that they say that they believe are early Viking settlements. Indoors, they have a really charming display of things that they've made to show us what Viking life was like. For instance, we could roll out bread, roll out dough, and make or toast our own little bread over the fire. We dressed to kill as Vikings. Here's the outside of the museum. It was pretty small, pretty simple. And this is a recreation of a Viking meeting area. And the area around there is just beautiful. This was actually taken from that little Viking picnic area. And I think it's gorgeous. And then these tabletop mountains were always really scenic. So we had really changeable weather. You know, you could see the mountains one moment, and then the next the clouds would come storming in, and you couldn't see much of anything. This isn't a great picture, but many towns in Iceland are cut off in the wintertime due to extreme weather, or because it takes a really long time to drive around the edges of the peninsulas to get to somebody. You can't go in a straight line from one little town to another most of the time. So in the 1960s, they started building tunnels to improve transportation times. In 1996, this tunnel that we went on was built. It connects Islafjordur to 3 towns that are even smaller. This was the last tunnel built that had just single lane segments. So as you're driving through this tunnel, cars can be coming at you. We didn't really see any signals of any sort in there. It's even more terrifying than it sounds. And the bus, which barely fits into the tunnel to begin with, just barreled along. And somehow we made it through alive. So that was good. Excuse me for a second.
By the way, Nancy, Vicki
Yes.
was wondering, are all the churches in Iceland Protestant?
I believe they are. Do you think that, Tom?
Might ask Martha.
Oh, Martha says specifically Lutheran. They are Lutheran.
Oh, okay. Is that good or bad?
Yes. Who are you
You
asking?
asking Vicky?
Ask Vicky. So anyway, this tunnel was kind of interesting, and there are many more tunnels, but most of them are a little wider now than this one. So that afternoon, which was, we took a boat to a place called Vigur Island, Vigur. There's 5 people who live on the island, and there's a large population of puffins, eider ducks, and Arctic terns and seals there. We saw some seals sleeping there as we went up from the boat. We climbed up the hill, and a little windmill there. And we did see puffins. We didn't see huge crowds of them, but we saw puffins all over the island. And you have to be careful because puffins actually burrow into the ground and they leave holes all over the place. And people frequently step in them and hurt themselves. Luckily, nobody in our group did. And as you're walking along, you'll just see the puffins pop up out of the holes, and suddenly they're there. Which is pretty exciting. So this is one view from Vigur Island. And then this is another view, and these depressions in the mountains are troll seats because sometimes trolls get tired and they have to sit down. So let me tell you a little bit about some specific trolls. So there's a group of trolls called the Icelandic Yule lads, and they're all brothers, and they have a mean mother and a kind of absent father. But the Yule lads are pretty good guys. They come at Christmas time, one at a time. One comes the first day, one comes the second day, one comes the third day. So for 13 days, there's a new troll coming, and they leave presents for the kids. So the kids get presents for 13 days. Besides these fairly friendly Yule lads, there's also a Christmas cat that is giant and bloodthirsty, and it prowls around the country on Christmas Eve and eats anyone who isn't wearing at least one new piece of clothing. And there's also a creature who happens to be their mother called Grilla, who comes down and boils naughty children alive. So it's a pretty gruesome story, but these guys have great names. There's Gullygawk, he steals foam from buckets of cow milk. Stubby, Spoon Licker, Pot Licker, Bowl Licker, Door Slammer, Skeer Gobbler, Skeer's yogurt, Sausage Swiper, Window Peeper, Door Sniffer, Meat Hook, and Candle Beggar.
So Kathy
cool.
was noting that the window peeper in particular seems awfully creepy.
Well, he tries to steal stuff. He's not really looking at people and what they're doing. He's trying to steal what he sees inside the windows, but it's all pretty creepy. Then we return to our ship, which right there. The next day we went to Siglafjordur, which that's how that's pronounced. And the highlight of this was the Herring Museum, which doesn't sound thrilling, but really it's pretty good. This is a statue. As you're walking from your ship to the Herring Museum, you come across some statues, and this is made out of wood. She's one of the herring girls. And this is not my picture, but this is herring girls who came to Siglafjordur. And when the fleets would come in, there would be a lot of people who came from different parts. They didn't all live in Siglafjordur. They would come from all over to help pack fish. And this is at the museum, and in the windows you see there's herring packers getting ready to work, and the tourists are visiting. And it was the first day of the season, the first day that they were open. And there's a tradition that the first graders come, or maybe they're kindergartners, but the little ones come and sing a song. So that was really cute. And then after that, we followed up with dancing. There's the fishwives dancing with the tourists. Dawn is dancing with our tour guide, whose name was Ingrid Gunnarsdóttir. And in Iceland, everybody, from generation to generation, you don't keep the last name. You're named whatever your first name is, and it's from a list of approved names. And then your last name is your father's name, and then either daughter or son at the end. So like Eric's son would be Eric's son, or Gunnar's daughter is Gunnar's daughter. So Don danced very well there.
Yeah.
Let's see. This little video of the fish packers at work.
Æsingur er þetta. Hefur þið eitthvað framláar stelpur mínar? Framláar? Já. Framláar? Það er ekki nema 3 tíma sem við skrifum heim. Já. Það var kannski búið að fínt að fá frá síldina sem maður getur fengið þess að tjöfn sem trygging einhver tíma. Segðu þau. Já, það er sín. Ég er alveg átt að varðast trúi. Það er ekki þá. Það vantar rennsli. Það kemur. Hvað er þetta? Það vantar saltina. Það vantar síldina hérna, Helgi minn. Amma, þú ert að skipta hérna svona. Það vantar rennsli. Það er kettlingin getur ekki fengið allt saman. Við þurfum að fá smá hérna. Það er að koma vatn og rennuna. Hvaða ráðslag er þetta að verða hérna á þessu helvítis plani hérna? Mä sen bara 59. Är det tajt?
Han får illa.
Hver þá? Fyrröksen gamli. Varstu komið með eitthvað? Það er einn með þér hérna á plani.
So, this is what it looked like back in the day. They would just have row after row of women gutting the fish, and each woman would fill her own barrels. She would salt the fish, pack the fish, and when the barrel was done, somebody would come to take it away, and they would slip a token into her boot. And at the end of the day, she would turn in her tokens to get her pay. And these women could make as much as $10 a day, which actually wasn't bad pay for women in those days. And I didn't take that picture. This is more of the museum, more little statues. This is what the harbor looks like today. And then this is a picture of a picture I took, and you can see it's just packed with ships, with boats, about 400 boats. And then I also took a picture of this picture. These are all barrels of either salted herring or herring oil ready to be sent out around the world. All in that little tiny town. And we walked back to the ship. It was very pretty. We saw the little school kids on their way back. And then that night we crossed the Arctic Circle. So right there in the picture, right behind Martha's head, is the Arctic Circle. Then the next day we went to an area called Akureyri and Lake Mývatn. This is a geothermal area near Akureyri. And this was like all mud. It was all wet. It was all mud. Before we got off the bus, we had to put on booties, which was a good thing because you could barely walk after a while because it was so muddy. Plus, it was snowing in May. We had snow. It's a very eerie landscape. Then we moved on to Dimmerborger. This is a volcanic area that Don explained how it was formed with the
Steam vents.
with the steam vents and everything. And people that go around and they have looked at these and decided that they look like different things. So this is the Yule lads' parents kissing each other. And more pictures, and this is a panorama of walking through this area. And next we went to a place called Godafoss Falls, just a very scenic area. And from there we went on to another nature bath, the Mývatn nature bath. This is another man-made lagoon, but it's with natural water. It was naturally occurring, except they dug it out to make it much bigger. And here's kind of a panorama of it. Now this is a lava cave near there, and if any of you are Game of Thrones fans, this is the actual cave where Jon and Ygritte, where they filmed the scene of Jon and Ygritte in the cave. If any of you remember that.
Oh, yes.
Oh yes.
You can forget that one.
That was a good one.
And they got married
They did.
based on that scene.
So you can see the rift in this area too, the continental rift, and here Don and I are holding hands, but we're on different continents. And here's another shot of the pseudo craters that Don talked about, which were caused by steam bursts rather than lava bursts. And as you go around town, as you go around the country, the farms all have, their hay put up in these covered up things. It's called troll candy. They're giant. They're the size of hay bales, but this is troll candy. And actually most of it's white, but the farmers are allowed to buy different colored covers for their hay to support different causes, like to support research into breast cancer. We saw pink hay bales as well. So here's our ship, which is this little tiny one in the front. And this is a celebrity ship in the back. So that was the size of our ship. The next day we went to Grenya Oarstar turf house. And this is not the turf house, this is the church, but right next to the church is a turf house. And there'd been a homestead here since the early settlement of Iceland over 1,000 years ago. And the person who settled it, well, it's named after him, but I can't say his name. So it's been rebuilt over the years. This one was built in the 19th century, and families lived in it until the 1940s, and it became a museum in the 1950s. And during the winter, the entire family, plus all of their servants and farm workers, would live in this one building. And these are guides dressed up in 19th century outfits. So all the buildings, they look separate, but they're really like one, and they're all joined by tunnels that look like this. So the family's part of the house looks pretty nice, looks kind of typical, but the servants' quarters look different. And the servants didn't have as much room, and they would have several people sleeping in one room. So what they did was they had these collapsible beds. So this bed collapses side to side. This one collapses front to back. And this one actually pulls out from underneath a table, and they would put a mattress down on that and sleep under there. So it was one of the ways that they made more room for themselves. This is what the kitchen looked like, the hearth area. And these are butter boxes. And butter was really important because it was an important source of fat and energy in the diet. And each person got a portion of the butter that was made and kept it in their own boxes. And they could use butter to barter for other things. This is what the underside of the roof, the turf roof, looked like. And if you were going to go down one of those long, dark tunnels, you could just take one of these little lamps that's stuck in the cracks, light it, and take it with you so you had some light to get where you're going. I'm kind of glad to get back outside again. This is the back of the house. And from there we went on to a town called Husavik, which has a, oops, that's the back of the house. We went on to Husavik, which was formerly a fishing center, but when the herring collapsed, it's now a whaling site because they have a big, beautiful harbor where whales come. Old fishing boats have been retrofitted to be whale watching boats, but we didn't go on an old one like this. I'll show you one that we did, but they dress you up in thick overalls to keep us warm, and it was cold out there. Here's Don looking very seaworthy. And we did see whales, which I believe were humpbacks. Is that right?
I don't know. Ask Martha.
Martha, were they humpbacks? Oh, she said no idea. But we saw whales. The scenery was beautiful, even though it was gray and overcast. It was beautiful. This is the kind of boat that we were on. This is just a view in the harbor. Spectacular. So the next day we went to a place called Sept18, and the big highlight there, well, there are two highlights, but one of the highlights was Petra's stone and mineral collection. So Petra was this old lady. Well, she started when she wasn't so old, but she did it till she was very old. She would just go out, put on a backpack, and go out walking and find rocks and bones. And she'd bring them back, and her whole house is filled with collections of stones and a stuffed goose and rocks. And you just walk around her garden. Here's Petra with her bag. And it's, you know, kind of charming in its own mild way. So then we went on to the Wartime Museum, which actually was kind of interesting. It's a little museum, but it's really well done, and it's about World War II, particularly from the point of view of the inhabitants of that town. The museum gives an insight into life during the war in a country which has never had an army and never been at war, with this one exception. The town was occupied by British and American troops. So the focus of this museum is the impact of the occupation on the local population, and it was very well done. Apparently there was a lot of dances between the girls and the boys. So this was the barracks at the museum, Quonset Hut barracks. This is a view in the town. So it's still a town. It's still new. It's got things going on. This is an area we stopped, which probably has a name that I don't know, but between the museum and getting back to the ship, we stopped for the scenic view. This is the town of Sept18 where the ship was. Another view of the town. The next day, we missed a port completely due to weather, so we'll skip that day. And the next day, we went to a place called Westman Aijar, which is like Westerners town. It was an island. It was really bad weather, but it was really interesting. And this was taken through the bus window on a rainy day. But the biggest thing of interest to us as tourists was that there was a volcanic eruption on the island that started January 1973 and ended July 3rd. So it went on for 5 months. During that time, the lava flowed pretty much continuously, sometimes very quickly and sometimes a little bit less. And parts of it started floating towards the harbor, which would have cut off the entire island if it got to the harbor. So the firemen and other people sprayed water on it to try to get it to stop. So this kind of just details some of the things that happened in those 5 months. But finally it did stop, and here is the edge of the lava flow right up behind these houses. And you might say, well, you know, lucky them, but really it had already covered up a bunch of houses behind here. So one of the things the guides kept telling us for some reason was that the way the boys had fun in Jaime Island was that they would swing off the cliffs. Oh, well, wait a minute, before that, here's this person's backyard and there's the edge of the lava flow. So pretty remarkable. And then we went to a museum. Once everything was all settled down, cooled off and all done, at some point they decided to build a museum, and they picked an area where they knew there was a house underneath it, and they just started and they just dug down until they uncovered this house. And you can walk around and look in the house. And here's the boys swinging off the cliffs. So they really do swing on ropes. This is my picture of a photograph in the museum, but it's you know, pretty dramatic to have the stuff going off right there behind the houses. So they do have a nice, the town's nice. It's one of the bigger towns actually, and they have a nice museum. And one of the museums, they have a puffin, and they talk about pufflings, which are baby puffins. And in August and September, the pufflings are starting to leave their burrows. Remember, they're underground things, but they could get confused because they go towards the light. So they go towards the lights in the city instead of the lights on the beach or the cliffs. So children are allowed to go out in the evenings with flashlights and paper boxes, and they pick up the pufflings and keep them overnight and take them in the morning to the cliffs or to the beach and release them there. They kind of swing them up in the air with their boxes so that they can fly off. I kind of would like to do that sometime. I'm not a kid, but I'd like to do it. This is in the museum. They had this one poor little puffin. That's actually a living bird, but I think it's kind of sad, but I posed with it anyway. We took a tour around the harbor in our Zodiacs because we'd been promised Zodiac rides that never came to fruition. So we all hopped in the Zodiacs and paddled around in the harbor on our last day. This is the view from our window at that last stop. It kind of was the quiet before the storm. So we'd been skirting bad weather, and we'd heard about bad weather, and we'd had a little bit of bad weather and missed that one port, but you know, it looked pretty there. I actually recorded our captain talking the last night because he was frequently very dryly funny in his talks to us.
The pilot is shortly on board, and we're ready to set sail. Here for you the departure information. We have now the last 121 nautical miles to Reykjavik. It was a wonderful voyage, and the weather had been mostly nice, but when angels travel, it could not be anything else. The pilot for Reykjavik we take tomorrow at 7.
Yeah, so he said we were going to get in at 7. In his whole talk, he never mentioned bad weather. You know, sounded okay. Last day, we're going to sail overnight and be in Reykjavik at 7 a.m. But pretty soon, we started getting waves like this. The room started creaking. And the next thing that happened was they came and shut our portholes. They closed them up. So that was it. We couldn't watch the waves anymore. And overnight, we had Martha wasn't bothered so much. She was in a different cabin in a different part of the boat. But Don and I, our beds slid back and forth all night long. Our table ended up here. This bed went back and forth and back and forth. A couple times, the whole mattress just slid off onto the floor. I was seasick, a little seasick. I didn't actually barf, but pretty seasick the whole night. And I just kept thinking, I can make it till 7 o'clock. I can make it till 7 o'clock. And then at 7 o'clock, the captain came on and said, well, we've had a little weather. We will be getting in around 10. It was kind of disheartening to think that I had 3 more hours of sliding around in the bedroom. But we did make it back to Reykjavik, and he took us to a beautiful location called the Perlin Center. It has views of the town. And then we went to the airport. This is a thing in the airport. And then we were done. We came home. That's the end.
Thank you so much. Let me unmute everybody. Let's see. Ask all to unmute.
Oh no!
Yeah, I just saw that in my news feed. Isn't that amazing? Horrible.
What?
Ruth Bader Ginsburg just passed away.
Oh, no.
Oh no.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Oh shit.
I should have waited until our talks.
Yeah, I should have waited.
Anyway, on a lighter note, did you guys go to the Penis Museum in Reykjavik?
Afraid not. We have to go back.
Okay. Kathy, did you go?
We did not hit the penis museum. We
Did
had,
you
I don't know. Yeah, that would have been interesting.
Yeah, we saw a documentary about it.
What do they have there?
Penises from every possible animal there exists.
We did go to the Big Lebowski bar in Reykjavik.
Oh my
It was
God.
funny. They had like recreated scenes from the Big Lebowski. I guess they like the Big Lebowski there.
We have different taste.
Oh, I thought something really interesting about the rift you showed in Thingvellir was
Yeah.
they said when we were walking in the rift that like, I don't know, 10 years ago, I don't know when it was just like the path used to be 30 feet above you, and then somebody discovered a little hole and they dug and it was all hollow underneath, which made me wonder
Wow.
what else I was walking on that was hollow underneath.
Yeah.
It
Wow.
does give you a good feeling.
But I felt like death was 1 trip away the whole trip. Like if you tripped, you know, if you were like, you tripped, there were no fences or anything to keep you from falling in the boiling water.
Yeah, there's waterfalls and puffin holes. And
Well, I did notice there didn't seem to be any railings around that waterfall.
No, there's no safety railings.
It was slippery too.
Eli got annoyed with me because I was like holding onto his hood the whole time, like no matter where we went.
Yeah, and you can just walk right up to a hot spot. I mean,
Oh yeah.
So Vicky reports that the population of Iceland is 364,000. The population of Durham County is 321,000. So just think of Durham with a lot of geography, geology. Yes. Durham with glaciers.
There you go.
Right.
Less traffic.
And Bjork.
In Bjork. Oh,
Did you see Bjork?
No, we had an Icelandic singer, but it wasn't Bjork.
That's true. One of our crew members had cut a CD, but that's not the type of music she sang.
No.
I mean, have you guys seen Eurovision?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Did you see the Will Ferrell movie?
Yeah.
Anybody say what the Arctic foxes eat if there's no mice and stuff?
That's a good question. What did they eat when they were there? Birds?
Eggs, maybe.
Oh yeah, fish maybe, if they're resourceful. Huh.
Puffins.
Yeah, puffins.
I'd ask that.
Is tourism the only industry that supports Iceland?
Well, I mean, they have things going on in Reykjavik. regular companies that people work at, but
They thought they were good at banking, but that didn't work out.
There's an enormous aluminum smelting plant.
Oh yeah.
And it's in Iceland because energy is so available there.
Yeah, bitcoins are generated in Iceland
Yeah.
because of the electricity being cheap.
It's the only energy self-sufficient country in the world, I believe.
Yep. Got plenty of it.
Can they grow any crops there?
not much because there's not much suitable area. They have to import a lot of their food.
And greenhouses.
But they have greenhouses. I mean, like the tomatoes, but tomatoes and lettuce and things like that are grown mostly in greenhouses. We also have
We
very
found
short seasons.
food was really expensive, I thought.
How expensive?
Like they really like hot dogs, and we got a meal where we all got a hot dog and a drink, and it was like $30.
Oh.
A person?
No, but still a hot dog. I don't know, I'm used to like. And then when we got burgers one night, it was like $60. I don't know. I thought the food was really expensive. We wound up going to the grocery store and eating like Nutella and jelly sandwiches for a lot of the trip.
Yeah, Katie and Shannon said it was super expensive.
Yeah. Well, it's an island. It's isolated.
I don't ever want Nutella again.
But I guess they have good vegan food.
Yeah,
So
that's
Don-
what Katie says. The vegan food was fabulous, but I found their food in general was really terrible. Like, it was what was it? Lamb,
Puffins and herring.
fish,
and minke whale.
and the fish tasted a little funny very often, like it was preserved.
Well, it's a good thing we're on a ship.
Yeah, we didn't have to pay separately for our food. So.
That's nice.
Yeah, so Vicky said all OPEC countries are self-sufficient in energy. What I meant to say was self-sufficient with with renewable energy. So
Yeah, that's what you meant to say.
right. So Don and Nancy, were your meals paid for?
Yes, I think we had 2 meals on the whole trip that we were on our own. The rest of it was included.
That's a good deal.
And the food was okay. You know,
Right.
the food on the ship was fine.
Yep.
We did have the one fancy meal where we ate the minke whale, and that was really, really good and really expensive. But
Something was said about milk, but I don't think they had cows. I didn't see any.
well, we didn't see any cows either, but they do have a source of milk. So they do have cows because Icelandic yogurt is called skyr, and you get that everywhere, and it's delicious. And like I said, their butter's delicious. So they do have cows somewhere, maybe just not in the areas we were.
There was a Icelandic movie that came out a couple years ago about 2 brothers who were dairy farmers who had a 50-year feud against each other.
Oh yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah. Other questions?
We would really recommend people go there, and you don't have to go for, a week or 2 weeks or anything. You can see a lot in a short period of time, and you can drive yourself, and it's really nice.
Yep.
It's spectacular, actually.
That was a wonderful talk. I really appreciate it.
It was great. Thank you.
Thanks, Don. Thanks, Nancy. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Thanks for your help, Rand.
Thank
guys.
you.
All right.